Hello and welcome to this week's Hopeful Conversations. I am Vicky Montague and today I am joined by Clare Assante. Now, Clare is somebody that I met, must be about 3 years ago, I think.
Yeah, I think it
Um,
was. Yeah.
and we started meeting at the pub. I was running a meetup in our local pub to look at where peace is found, I guess. And Clare came along. And since then, you've trained to be a wellbeing coach, or I don't know what you call yourself. I should just.
Um, I always just say coach, but yeah, that sounds more fun.
Yeah, I never know what to call myself, so I just cut it out. Thin
Yeah.
air. But you trained with Amy Johnson.
Yeah.
It was about a year ago, wasn't it? I think coming up to a year.
Yes, it was. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly a year ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
since the time that I met Clare, in fact, during our meetings, you were diagnosed with a health condition, which I guess is I'm not going to talk much. Well, I'm not going to talk about at all. I'm going to hand over to you to tell people about it. But what I noticed in those meetings when you came along was just this unbelievable sense of calmness and okayness with a diagnosis that most of us would have just gone absolutely mental about. Um, and so that's I have so much respect for you, and I'm just so interested to kind of hear from you. What how you remained so calm in the face of such a scary on the surface sounding diagnosis. So yeah, can you maybe tell people what the diagnosis was, and yeah, let's go from there. See.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I was diagnosed 2 years ago with a eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa, and it was the weirdest thing because I just went in for a regular eye test to Specsavers, and I'd started to do that thing, when you look at your phone from a distance, with your longer arms. And I went in, they looked, and somebody went and got another lady, and they both had a look, and even that didn't kind of ring any alarm bells because I've actually got a chickenpox scar on my eyeball. So normally if I go and get my eyes checked, everybody kind of comes into the room, they're like, oh my god, that's amazing.
Wow.
So I just thought it was that. So they said, oh, I'm going to refer you to the hospital because you do have a bit of something or scarring or something in the back of your eye. So literally within, I think, a few days, I had this letter. So normally that normally tells you it's something serious, isn't it? So I went into the hospital and they checked it and said, they kept saying this retinitis pigmentosa, and I mean, I don't really go to the eye hospital ever, so I didn't really kind of know the system. So I sort of had the normal eye check, and then they went in and looked and said I had this thing, but nobody gave me a leaflet or told me what it was. They just said these two words and sent me on my way. Wow. So I'd had the eye drops in that they put in when you go in to have your eyes tested. So I couldn't see for a while properly anyway. So my husband came and picked me up, and I thought, well, I guess I'd better Google what this thing is. And then they came up with it's a rare genetic eye disease that will take your sight, your vision. And I was like, well, that can't be right. Surely somebody would have said.
Yeah.
So, and they had said they wanted to see me in a couple of weeks anyway. So I thought, well, I won't take it too seriously. And then I asked my parents about it because they said it was genetic, and she didn't remember anybody. She sort of thought she remembered an auntie that might have been blind, but there was I don't think they would have had that kind of test back then anyway. So so I took my mum with me the next time because I thought if they needed to ask her any questions, and then even then went in, yeah, you've got retinitis pigmentosa, nothing we can do. You'll lose some or all of your vision. You need to let the DVLA know when you can't drive anymore. Off you go again. Nothing else. That was it. So there's like
Wow.
dropped a bombshell and just sent me on my way. And yeah, never really heard anything else. I mean, I think I might have gone in for one more test for a field vision test, but it was exactly the same experience. And like now I sort of look back and think it was probably the best way, because it meant I didn't really have that kind of initial panic and stress. And obviously I'd already discovered this understanding of how the mind works, which really, really helped. And yeah, it was just all very factual, and then off you go. Yeah, so even now I've not had any appointments or anything. So,
Oh.
and you sort of think, well, if that was somebody else, then that could have been quite a big thing.
Yeah, like,
yeah.
but, I mean, to me, I remember when you told me, you know, without this understanding, that would be, you know, potentially devastating. I mean, you're a hairdresser, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
and your entire livelihood depends upon you being able to see.
Yeah.
So you obviously Googled it and you found out what it was and what it meant. How come you didn't go off into a total and utter like panic?
I mean, I've never really had an awful lot, like, health anxiety is not really my thing. It's not the thing I panic about. You know, I don't get too in my head about if if something happens to me, I know I'm probably going to be okay. And, you know, obviously this understanding teaches you not to kind of go into that future thinking, because we have no idea what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes, let alone 5 years. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do have my moments when I'm in a low mood, and that's what I find interesting as well, how it runs so parallel to this understanding, because we talk about being able to see and not see in this understanding, don't we? Like, you know, so when my mind is clear, my eyes feel clear. And when my mind is busy and full of rubbish, that's when I start to kind of think, okay, right, is it starting? You know, am I, you know, and I start kind of analysing everything. And I think that's why it hasn't felt so kind of overwhelming, because I kind of see it with interest, really. I mean, it's fascinating how it goes like that with my moods. And the fact that I know that whatever the next step is, I will do it then, you know. Nicola Bird saying, is there, I will cope with it then, that kind of thing. It's that's how I'll deal with the whole thing.
But even that, to somebody who, I mean, the fact that you say, you know, like health anxiety is not really your thing, like you kind of know that you're going to be okay. Like, to someone who has got health anxiety, to someone who has got a lot of concerns about their body, their physical being, how do you know you're okay? Like that, to somebody who, you know, that would just be so foreign. I can hear people listening to this thinking, but how do you know you're okay? Like, you're not okay. If your body's not okay, you're not okay. Like, what would you say to somebody who you know, who clearly thought that if their body was failing, that there was something wrong that needed to be done?
I guess, like, I mean, I do have my thing, you know, and this is how kind of out of proportion it is, and totally impersonal, and just doesn't really make any sense at times, that thought is. So I go completely crazy if my house is a mess. And to, you know, to anyone else, yes, of course, having an eye disease is much worse than your house being a mess. But isn't that interesting how my mind will go crazy about my house, but because health anxiety isn't I can see it for what it is, and I can see that, you know, if I'm to get up in my head about my eyes, it's when I'm feeling in a low mood or low state of mind. It's just, I don't know, that just proves to me how impersonal thought is. And also, I guess I really get the fact that I'm not my body as well. You know, I know that's quite a big thing to talk about, but you know, if I was my body, I wouldn't be able to be aware of my body. And the same with thoughts. You know, we are not our thoughts because we're able to be aware of our thoughts. And that might have gone a bit big there, sorry.
No, I love it. I really think this is such a key point for people to see, particularly people who have got physical health conditions, because we get so tied up with this idea that we are our bodies, and so therefore if something happens to our bodies, then there's no point in being here, almost, you know, like there's then life would not be worth living, kind of. And I've been seeing so much about that recently. It's like, you know, firstly, if we can just look at our bodies and see that we can't be our bodies because they change all the time. And there's something about us that remains constant. There's a constant in us that we know we are. Like, I know that I'm the same person that I was when I was, I don't know, my earliest sort of memories of being 6 or 7 or whatever. Like I know, I can remember that time, and I know that I'm that person. But my body doesn't look anything like it did then. And the same with the thoughts, like you say, we can see our thoughts and they change all the time. And, you know, one minute you can feel really upset about the idea of having, you know, this eye problem. And another time you can just be like, oh, well, you know, I'll deal with it when and if it happens. Like, our thoughts literally change. Our thoughts about the same thing can change. Yeah. But there's this constant of who we are, and so therefore we cannot be those thoughts either. No, and like last week I was in a slightly lower mood, and you know, I was imagining all sorts going on in my eyes, and you know, it was the light was bothering me, then the dark was bothering me, and you know, it's whereas if, you know, when I'm in a higher state of mind, I'll just make sure I've always got my sunglasses, or, you know, I do something practical about it. So it just doesn't kind of feel so huge, where you start kind of jumping into the future and, oh, you know, this is it, this is the start of it. And, you know, of course my mind goes there somewhere, but I think just being aware of that, even how it does sometimes, even though the condition is still the same, where my mind goes all the time is totally different. And as you said, I always know that underneath there's something that will make me, that, you know, I'm always okay, no matter what happens to my eyes, to anything in my life, I know that I'm okay. And that deep knowing, that doesn't, like, we all have that, it's just we become disconnected from it, as far as I can see. Yeah. And that disconnection comes from believing what's going through our crazy thoughts, as far as I can see. Like, we have a bundle of scary thinking and we buy into it and we believe it, and it takes us away from the truth of knowing that we're okay. Like, we're kind of born with this well-being, this knowing of okayness. Like, when we're toddlers, we're not like going, oh my goodness, what would happen if this happened, or what would I do if this, you know, we're just in the moment, like, we're just connected to that knowing that we're okay. We don't worry about anything, like, you know, I mean, that's why we as parents have to kind of help to bring some awareness in, because we would just run in front of a car, like, we wouldn't worry about you know, we don't have any sense of that. And so we need some sense, I guess, of what's going on around us. We need some of that to protect us, but we lose sight of that solidness of being okay, no matter what. And I guess that is part of the misunderstanding, isn't it? That your thinking is there for like practical and creative reasons, yet we've used it as against ourselves. And you know, if we knew that thinking was just there to
to kind of get us through the day, as you said, kind of keeps us safe, you know, tells us not to do things. And instead of us totally getting wrapped up in the horror story of everything, you know, just people knowing that it's such a relief, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think what I hear when you're talking about it, it's like you've got this sort of clear understanding of reality, like right now, right here, right now. I don't have any problems with my eyes. Like my eyes are fine. I didn't. If I hadn't been to the opticians, I would know. No, I wouldn't know about this condition. Like there's nothing here right now in this moment. But that in a low state of mind, you can start to imagine. You can use your imagination. You can use your thinking to create a really scary looking future.
Yeah,
but it's not here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I look back, before I had this understanding, I would not have taken this well. Like really, I know I would have been awful because I was a worrier anyway. You know, and anxiety brought me to this understanding. And I just know that it would have been whirling around my head all day, every day. And I would have lived by that diagnosis. I probably would have moved house by now, nearer shops. I probably would have already thought about giving up my job. I would have possibly started walking around practicing not being able to sit, you know, closing my eyes, not, you know, it would have been probably a full-time, very consuming job to prepare myself for this awful thing that was going to happen to me. But wouldn't that be a shame that I'd wasted all my time with sight thinking about not having sight?
And that's what we do, isn't it? Like, you know, if you have migraines, for example, when you're not having a migraine, you're thinking about what you might do if you had one. Like,
yes.
You're preparing for the possibility of it happening.
Yeah.
Like you say, living in an imagined world rather than engaging in the actual world.
Yeah, and I sort of think it's weird for me that I was kind of, that this was my thing, because I think even when I found this understanding, I'm not sure I was seeing it enough. Do you know what I mean? And then this has kind of taken me, like, obviously I still get caught up, but it's taken me a lot further, where, you know, I'm grateful every single day. It sounds a bit cheesy, but I wake up every day, if I'm in a bad mood, I'm like, well, actually, I can still see. So, you know, that's a real kind of something that will flip your mood very, very quickly. And that proves that, you know, if you can flip your mood in a split second, then it can't be the eye condition. It can't be the fact that somebody's annoying you that's making you feel the way you feel. If you can come out of it that quickly with one thought, then that is the only answer, isn't it? That has to be your thoughts.
Yeah, and that's like, when you see that, I guess the tendency for people listening to this that might not know about the 3 principles, which is what we both share, the tendency is to think, okay, so I just need to think positively all the time. So I need to just focus on good things. So I need to look at, you know, if ever I feel worried about something, I just need to think about changing that thought. But that's not what we're saying at all, is it? So can you maybe talk a little bit about what it is that you see that made all the difference?
I think when somebody told me that by the time you have a thought, it's already formed and on its way out, that sort of stopped my trying to control any kind of thoughts, because it's like, well, okay, well, there's no point me trying to change any thought I have because it's already done, already cooked. And just the knowing that all it is thought, you know, so that it just comes in, does its thing and moves on, because that's what it wants to do. That's what it's designed to do. But what we tend to do is have a thought that we don't like and then try and get it out of our head or change it, or and we pay a lot of attention, and that's what holds it in place. So I think you know, when you start to kind of get a little bit of an understanding, then you just become very suspicious of every thought you have.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm not sure that one's true.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a massive one for me, because I lived my life believing every thought I had was almost an instruction. And the
Yes.
more urgent it was, and the more I felt it, the more, you know, worked up I was about it, then to me it meant I needed to do something immediately. I needed to, yes, that was a really valid thing to be thinking, and therefore it needed to be sorted out or fixed or whatever. And I think the first thing I saw when I was introduced to this was, I don't have to think, I don't have to listen to those thoughts, I don't have to believe those thoughts. That was monumental for me, that the idea that I didn't have to believe it. I could have these thoughts and I could just pay no attention to them. Not try and change them like I had been doing. You know, I trained in NLP, and that's all about changing thoughts and making them different, or moving them, or, you know, whatever. It was always doing something with the thinking, and I didn't succeed with that. You know, it just didn't get me anywhere. So I felt like a failure even more, because
Yes.
I couldn't even change these negative thoughts I was having. But to realise that the negative thoughts I was having didn't mean anything about me, and that I could just ignore them, was such a huge weight for me to be lifted off my shoulders. Like, I still have those thoughts, but as you say, there's like a suspicion about them. Is that really true? Like, it feels really, really true. It feels like I really need to sort this problem out. But if I'm feeling it that strongly, that's my body's way of telling me to just leave it alone. The opposite from what we're kind of brought up to believe, I guess. That if we feel urgent and that we need to sort something, we should sort it out immediately. It's like, no, if we're feeling that urgency and constriction and everything else in our bodies, then it's the time to take your hands off the wheel and just allow those thoughts to pass. Because when we act from that place, we're never going to be acting from a, we're never going to achieve a great outcome, I guess.
And like, how cool is that we have this inbuilt system to tell us what kind of mood we're in? We don't even have to guess, you know. that tight, as you said, that tight constricting feeling where you just feel uncomfortable, that, I don't like this, and that is your indicator to tell you that you're just up in your head. And the reason why it feels horrible and painful is because if it wasn't, we just wouldn't take any notice of it.
Yeah.
And I just, again, blown away by that all the time. And I love the fact that I know what state of mind I'm in because of that. And I love the fact that I've been given this amazing system to tell me, because, sometimes I might be, the children might do something and I'm feeling tight already. So I'm just like, this is the worst thing in the world, right? We have to change everything. We have to do this, that, and the other, and sort something out. And then that feeling is telling me, hang on a minute, step away from the children. I don't think they're as bad as you think they are. It's just that you're completely wrapped up in it at the moment. And then when that feeling goes and you're in a much higher state of mind, either it just doesn't happen, or you'll do something very practical about it. If, I don't know, let's say it's too much screen time, something like that, you say, okay, we're just going to rein it in a bit and do a little bit less, and that's full stop. That's all it takes, isn't it?
Yeah. And I loved when you had your diagnosis, you were so, you were in that calm place. So rather than, you could have gone, oh my God, this is going to mean this is going to mean that, and in that place of you would not have been able to, you can't think clearly, you can't find solutions, right? And what I loved about where you were at was that maybe you had all of that, but you could see it for what it was, and you just allowed it to pass through. And then what came to you was, oh, yeah, I've seen so much about anxiety. I would love to train to help other people see what I've seen. And I could do that if I was blind or not.
Yeah.
And you went and found the training with Amy Johnson. But it was in such a calm place. It wasn't like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to be a hairdresser anymore, so I must find something else to do. It was a calm knowing this is the right way to go. I know that this feels really right.
Yeah. It definitely happened like that as well. It really did. It was almost like the moment I was sat in front of my computer and an advert popped out for her coaching, and I literally just paid the deposit without even looking how much it cost or anything. It just kind of like, well, that's what I'm going to do, And a few years before that, even with this understanding, that wouldn't have even occurred to me. But it's just amazing to be able to kind of trust that whatever step's meant to come next, it will come next. And even like the coaching I do, I didn't really think about like any kind of niche, but I sort of think, well, actually that would be a good thing for me to start talking to people about health anxiety. And because I'm somebody with a diagnosis, I can help other people. And it all kind of, and a niche is just kind of helping people to kind of search for this, I guess, isn't it? You sort of, that's what you're kind of looking for. And then you can help more people. And that's kind of, again, that's kind of how it works, isn't it? Where it just, the next step is taken.
Yeah, and there's no kind of effort in that. It's just and it comes back to that whole thing of knowing we're okay. It's that knowing that we will know what to do, trusting that we're going to know what to do when we need to. And the fact that advert popped up when it popped up, and there was just a knowing inside you. There wasn't you didn't go into your head thinking, oh well, I could do this, because if I did that, then it would mean that when I went blind, or if I went blind, this would, there was none of that in your description. It was just popping up and knowing that was what you were going to do.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful, beautiful consequence of this conversation to me, is like, when we become more settled and we pay less attention to the busied up thinking, to the anxious thinking, to the fearful thinking, whatever, we have access to our knowing that we all have anyway, but we often can't hear it because we're so caught up in our personal thoughts and trying to unravel everything and work stuff out. The answers are never in that busy thinking, in that busy place. The answers are always come to us when we're just open and quiet and connected.
Because when I was thinking about like what to call my business, it's like Clare, Assante coaching, and then I was just doing something one day. I was like, oh, blindsided by thoughts. And I was like, where on earth did that come from? Yeah. And that's it, isn't it? Where when your mind's slightly clearer, you just pop, some amazing idea comes out.
And I love that, because Michael Neal has talked about that, where he says, so where did that come from, Claire? It came from out of the blue, right? We'd say that all the time. Oh, it came out of the blue. What's out of the blue? And out of the blue is just that when we drop something, when we stop thinking and thinking and thinking on it, there it is.
Yeah.
Like, the obvious answer, the answer to the problem.
Yeah, because I think I asked you as well where you got your name from, because I was so impressed with it. It's like, oh my goodness, that's amazing, what a good idea. Probably exactly the same for you.
Exactly. I've done exactly that. I've been sitting there, almost sort of hunched over my laptop. Oh, what can I call it, what should I do? Blah blah blah. In my head, it's like when we're like that, we are looking down a telescope, like trying to find the answer, like zooming in. And, you know, same as you, I spent hours and hours thinking and trying to work it out. And then, I don't know, I was out on the beach or something and I'd stopped looking in the telescope and I was stopped even, it wasn't even on my mind. And then in it pops.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And that's how it works, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the more time we spend connected to knowing that space, the space before thought, the easier, the more flowing life appears to be.
I think when you're not aware of it working that way, you know, your busy mind just becomes the norm, doesn't it? You don't know any different. So even those kind of spaces you might have got, you don't recognize them for what they are. Whereas when you know this understanding, you can see when your mind settles, because you're not attributing it to, I don't know, a glass of wine or walk on the beach, you know that it's available at all times. And I think that's the difference, isn't it? That we know that we can experience that anytime we want. And I just did not have a clue that that's how it works. So just thought, well, busy, busy, busy. That's just how it is. Yeah. As you said, react to every thought you have. That's just the way it's done. You know, that's just life. And it's a bit dull and it's a bit of a struggle and it's hard work. And it just feels so different now.
Yeah, and it's not only reacting to every thought, it's reacting to every experience outside of you too, isn't it? We mistakenly believe that it's the boss, it's the relationship, it's the child, it's the illness, it's the, you know, fill in the blank that's causing me to be unhappy, angry, whatever, fill in the blank. Yeah. And what we both see more and more of is that it's never the thing out there that's causing us to feel anything, but it's always our thinking about the thing out there. And it can only be that when you start exploring that more, you can see it can only be that way, because otherwise we would all have the same experience.
Yeah.
The boss, the horrible boss that's making us feel angry would make everybody feel angry. Yeah. And yet he's not. Yeah. How does that work?
Yeah. I know, and it's funny, isn't it, when you notice it and you start to kind of look at how other people take things, or you know, when you're watching a film, one person hates it, one person loves it, or you think somebody's being really annoying and somebody else hasn't even noticed, or you know, it's just so interesting when you start actually being aware of it all.
Yeah, the role that your thoughts are playing on your experience. Yeah. And I guess that, you know, that's probably a great place to sort of wrap up, but it's that we as coaches never ask people to take what we're saying as fact. It's like we plant the seeds of, well, maybe it looks like, you know, maybe it's this way. Maybe have a look for yourself in the world and see whether it's true. That it can only be our thinking that's creating our experience. And, you know, that is what we've both done. We've both just got curious, I guess, about how life works. And it's turned totally around, because we think it's an outside-in world. And what this understanding kind of does is shakes that up and gets you to look at whether that's true or not. Yeah. And the consequence, I suppose, if people are like, so what difference does it make? It's like, well, if it's the boss that's making you feel angry, you've got to do something about the boss, but you can't. How can you can't change the boss? So okay, so I have to change jobs then, and then it happens in the next job and the next job, and it's like, well, if you see that it's just the way you're thinking about the boss, and you see that thoughts change all the time, and you don't have to take them seriously. You don't need to do anything in the outside world, and everything changes.
Yeah.
And that's so beautiful. It's like,
it is.
you don't need to do anything about your physical health condition. You're in seeing the role your thoughts play in how it plays out allows you to live gracefully with it, I guess.
Yeah. Gorgeous.
So lovely catching up with you.
Yeah, thank you, Vicky. That was lovely.
Oh,
that went really quickly.
I know, they always do, these conversations.
Yeah.
So I so appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience, because I am completely in awe of you. I think you're amazing. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who have, taken a lot away from hearing you. Yeah. So if people want to find out more about you, or how they can engage with you or contact you, how do they do that?
I have a website which is blindsidedbythought.com, and yeah, you can contact through there. But yeah, I'd love to help as many people as I can.
Well, I will put the link obviously in the video, so if anyone does want to just click on that, they can click through to your
Brilliant.
site.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll catch up with you.
Lovely to talk to you. Yeah, thank you, Vicky.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.